This war headline week has people calling Bitcoin for 50,000 and 40,000s again. And to be fair, the backdrop is ugly. Escalation, missiles, oil risk, Hormuz, all of it. And if you wait for the headlines to feel safe, you usually get the timing wrong, because big turns often happen when fear is loudest, not when it feels calm. So today we're using one chart to frame the next move: Bitcoin and VIX. It can break either way, and both paths have clear conditions. Either Bitcoin flips this zone and runs, or it loses it and the downside talk gets real. So Oz, what are we actually looking at here? Yeah, in simple terms, Oz, what is Bitcoin VIX chart measuring, and why does it tend to spike around big headlines, particularly with this week and the war that's going on?
Yeah, hi Doc, hi everybody. Yeah, so obviously with the war news, with what's going on around in the world, it's quite a lot of uncertainty, right? And what I want to take you back to is this Bitcoin VIX chart. And I first came across this chart when I did it first was back in you can see here, was back on the 7th of April 2025, so almost a year ago, and it got 1 million views, this chart. And that was when, surprise surprise, the tariff news was going on, right? And Trump tends to have a lot of these VIX spikes in his presidency over these past few years, and the tariffs was the last one. And when that was happening, I remember last year, if we go back to the chart last year, I think it was around April, right? We had, again, I remember that period quite well. And it was, if we go back to, April, that week, April the 7th, right? We a lot of people are saying Bitcoin's going down to 60,000, 50,000, and it's over. That was the common consensus back then as well. The Bitcoin, the VIX on its own it's not really a crypto focused chart, right? So the VIX chart is generally measures the volatility for the S&P 500, and what you normally find is that it sets expectations for the next 30-day period. But when you pair it with the VIX, because obviously the risk on assets, which is the stocks, and Bitcoin is very much a risk on asset as well, right? When you pair it together, it actually gives you a gauge of where we are and what's happening in the market. And often what you see is if there's a rising Bitcoin VIX chart, that means Bitcoin is strong relative to market fear, and usually means risk on. And if it's falling, then it's weak, and then it's defensive, and there's more fear. So if we go to the actual Bitcoin VIX chart, right, this is what we see. We see a kind of lots of these spikes coming down, right? So the first one was back here in 2015, which was the deflationary scare. Everybody remembers the COVID crash, right? Which was another massive crash. And then in Trump's presidency, right, we've had 3 spikes, right? So we've had, this was the carry trade, the Japan carry trade unwind, which happened late 2024 or mid 2024. Then we had the tariffs, which was last year, 2025 April, and now we have the Iran war. So if I put what I'm looking at, right, which is the TA on this and how it's been respecting, these bottom sort of zones are very key to when things are at peak fear for Bitcoin. So for me, Doc, it's just measuring the fear and basically Bitcoin. And what you can see is since August, we've been going down. We've been going down into basically peak fear, which in my opinion now has been bottoming, right? Just like we had with the tariffs. It might not seem so right now, because there is still a lot of uncertainty in the market. Is Trump making a deal? Is this not really a deal? Is he bluffing them? Are they going to strike again? We don't know what's going to happen in the next week or even 24 hours, right? We don't know what is happening in terms of the geopolitical situation. But what the VIX chart is telling me is that we are according to this chart, we are basically at peak fear. which is the Iran war. That's the narrative this time, and from here we should be seeing risk come back onto the market. So that's what I'm looking at now, which is, peak fear. Each of these times was a good time to buy. If it's kind of strange that from the deflationary scare to COVID was about 5 years, right? So there wasn't a massive crash like that since COVID, but over this last, I would say, 2 years, we've had 3 major spikes hit the bottom. And you can see Bitcoin in each of those. If you look at Bitcoin back in August, this was the deflationary scare, this was the tariffs, and now we're in another sort of scenario. So yeah, Doc, this is just showing volatility and fear with Bitcoin. And for me at the moment, it looks like peak fear has hit the market, and now we potentially should be setting ourselves up for a bounce.
Okay, so looking at this bounce issue, so viewers understand what it represents, I was talking about marking the compression zone and showing what matters on this chart, because what would you need to see for an upside path, and what would confirm a downside path, in terms of 2 clean routes, as viewers are looking at this and maybe confused of what they need to do, or what your opinion is moving forward?
Yeah, so for me, it's quite clear, right? Because if you change it into a monthly chart, you can quite see the kind of trend line that's been following, since 2015, right? If you have a break below this trend line, which is which we currently hit, right, which sits at around 38 billion, right, due to the VIX, then I would say we're heading for that would mean that this trend line since 2015, that's been supporting price basically since 2015, telling us when peak fear has been hitting the market. So each low is when peak fear hits the market for the particular period of time. So right now, if we start breaking down, right, and the VIX, when the VIX spikes up, markets normally crumble, right? Risk assets, they normally go down. So what I would say is, if this starts breaking down, then okay, then we would be, for me, then I would say, that would be one of the indications. There are other indicators, but this would be on the VIX chart. This would be one indication that the markets globally will be breaking down, whether that's the stock market, whether that's Bitcoin, all risk assets will be breaking down, because then the VIX would start jumping, risk would be off, and we would have probably great problems in the world geopolitically. You would probably, because this is more of a I would classify this more as a news chart, because once the peak fear normally hits during these times, there's normally a big world event that happens, and you can see I've labeled it quite clearly. So you can see that each of these, it's not just technical levels, these are actually world events that happen. And if you've just been around in the last couple of years, this time last year, tariffs was all over the place. Is it a cold war between or a trade war between China and America? We had all that sort of thing going on back in February, March, April, and then that cleared. We had the unwind of the carry trade back in 2024. COVID, everybody is aware of COVID. You just have to say the word COVID and everybody understands exactly what happened during the world. And now we have the Iran war. So these are major events, and if this breaks down, then that would mean that the Iran was probably accelerating into something even greater and even more devastating than we imagine. Maybe you'll have an energy crisis, going across the world, where we'll have greater problems than Bitcoin dumping. You'll have big problems in the world. If this starts dumping. So for me personally, right now, I don't see that. Just looking at this, this holds. I see another move up to the upside, making one more high, making one more high for Bitcoin, and also for the risk assets in general. So when it comes to peak fear, obviously it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and say, this is going down. We're going down to $30,000, $40,000, and it's all over. but during peak fear, it's not easy to kind of be contrarian to the market. I know a lot of people are looking at the 4-year cycle, but I'm not really looking at that generally, right? It's not something that I'm focused on too much. Right now, I'm looking at the fear hitting in. If we can see this trend line from 2015 hold and start to move up, we'll see risk assets breathing, and then we will see one more high. But this will break eventually, because it's compressing. You can see in the highs, 2017 was the high of the bull market. Then we had 2021, a double high in 2021 and late November. Then we had the November 2024 high and the August 2025. I think the top price was in October, but August was kind of warning you that this is basically nearing the top. And then I think we'll have one more potential high, but sooner or later you're gonna see this trend line break. Trend lines don't last forever. If it breaks to the upside, you're gonna see that would be great for everybody, because you'll see prices that you couldn't have dreamed of. But on the opposite side, what I'm thinking most likely would be to happen, because this is kind of a bearish pattern in my opinion, right? This is just like a bearish, you can call it like an ascending wedge, sort of a contracting ascending wedge sort of pattern. And by the end, I think we will have a crash, and a bigger crash than any of these that preceded it. So that's my take on this. I would want to see it now, the ratio rise into one more high, and then probably as we reach the top of this trend line, we will start coming down, and then I don't think the next time would hold. That's just my assumption, or a prediction, I guess. At the moment, I guess we'll have to wait and see when that happens. But for the meantime, I don't expect it to break right now, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But this is my kind of take on the Bitcoin VIX chart.
Okay, waiting and seeing what would happen for the upside move to play out, Oz. Yeah, what would that line that would make you respect the downside quickly as well?
So this is one element of it, and if we go into just the technical analysis part of it, right, and look at some of the key levels that I'm looking at. So I've posted a lot on X as well what I'm thinking. Right now these are just the minor levels I'm looking at. I mentioned that the value area high for Bitcoin, which is is around $71,000 at the moment. We're basically between a range of, you could say, 66,000 to 71,000, and one side is going to break eventually. For me, the ultimate bullish signal, you get above 74,000, 73,000, this sort of area here. This is from the this is the last anchored VWAP coming down from the last high that we had at around 97,000. You start basically holding this as support, then I think we're into that VIX going up, with Bitcoin going up, and potentially new all-time highs coming for the final time. So that's what I think potentially could happen for the upside. The real level is above here, so above that $74,000, getting support here and actually breaking out properly, right? Breaking out properly. At the moment, it's just in a range. We're stuck in a range, and to the downside, obviously, breaking $66,000 would then, in my opinion, you break this, you would get down to $57,000 around here, and then there we would have to see the reaction, if it is a fake out to the upside, or if it's more substantial break to the downside. And if the Bitcoin VIX is also going down, then that would further solidify that this is actually breaking down now, and we are going into a much deeper crash, potentially to the 40,000. So obviously at the moment we're in a holding pattern, but for me, as Bitcoin and the VIX chart is holding, I would say right now there's more scope for upside than downside. Obviously if one breaks or the other breaks, then we can reassess it, but at the moment I am fully expecting one more high before we get, in my opinion, the crash. And who knows what the narrative would be here. There's always a narrative at the bottom, right? But this crash, because after you come up and you break this trend line, it would be more significant than any of the ones we've had before, because this would break, and this would, you know, break quite. It wouldn't just stop. It would go quite deep, and that would be the real crash, in my opinion. But obviously, that's still some time away, and we still have to monitor it, month to month, week to week, and see where we go. That's the best update I can give at the moment on this chart.
Okay, there you have it. That's the map, volatility backdrop, 2 routes and the price conditions. Now what we'll have to do is just wait and see how this situation does resolve. And a quick one for you, what do you think, this breaks up or down from here? Leave a comment down below. And if you want deeper members breakdowns and full framework behind the scenes, check out the Alpha Insider, link is below. Again, subscribe, like for more TA updates like this, and see you guys at the next one.